There we are. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Good morning, everybody. God bless you. I don't like snow. Thankfully, it's just stopped snowing. We have a sort of gloopy sort of rain out there. It looks very nasty. But it gets very cold here when it snows. And anyway, I've got 2 hand warmers, a hot water bottle, a rug, and a blower on, and 2 other electric fires on, and I'm just about warm enough. I think I must suffer from poor circulation or something. The next stop will be taking myself off and drinking ginger wine. I'll still be cold, but I just won't remember that I am. Okay, well, let's see who's here. Anthony is. Yes, we've been having a conversation already. I'm glad there's no snow where you are. Snow in Dresden. Oh, Elizabeth. Good morning, Korean. I bet it's nice and warm where you are. Hello, Helena. Good morning. God bless you. And Gary from the Black Country. Graham, good morning. And Christopher, good morning. Beecham. The Beecham community. Yes, of course, yes. By the Malvern Hills. It was good to meet you a little while ago, Father Christopher. And God willing, we'll meet you this month, isn't it? It's December already. It'll be cold in that church, I can tell you now. Good morning, Ian. Snow on the tops in Cumbria, yes. And John McGrath in Belfast. I hope you're nice and warm. Good morning, Judith. Yes, we have snow. It's not settling, thank goodness, but I think it's probably going to. Up here, it settles pretty quickly. In fact, looking over there, the opposite hill, I think on the very top I can see the sun settled. It's a bit difficult to tell, there's quite a lot of mist, and with this eye here getting a cataract in it, makes everything look misty as well. Anyway, there we go. Enough of all that. Good morning, Corey. Good morning, Phoebe. God bless you all. Okay, before anything else, let's carry on. So we're going to have a look at John chapter 1, verses 19 through 23. Maria, that is Christopher Sterry, Father Christopher, who is near Malvern. Brother Daniel, I know you love snow, and he's down making candles at the moment, and it's quite a slippery, muddy walk down to that particular area of the monastery down there. So not all that happy place to be. It ought to be nice and warm though down there. Anyway, here we go. John chapter 1, verses 19 to 23. Now this is the testimony of John. When the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Christ." And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" And he answered, "No." Then they said to him, "Who are you, that we may give an answer to those who sent us? What do you say about yourself?" He said, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, making straight the way of the Lord, as the prophet Isaiah said." Now, we said earlier, not being today, but maybe a week or 2 ago now, that John has divided up the beginning of his gospel into 1 full week. And this is the first day of that 1 full week. People slightly disagree about where the divisions of the days are. But we can all of us agree that this is the very first one. It may well be that 24 through to 28 is a second day, or it could be later on of the same day. Okay, doesn't really matter. But the idea is overall that it depends on whether we see him celebrating the Sabbath or not. Here we have the first of the days, the first of the 7 days of the evangelist John, showing that God is recreating the universe. I think, and we find that quite a number of the fathers think, that the last day is where the Lord turns water into wine. And you have within that this idea in chapter 3, the last day of the 7. That would then be the 7th, the 8th day, really. So that would be Sunday, the day of resurrection. And the Lord is showing by changing water into wine the new creation, the new dispensation, the new covenant that he's going to be doing. Hello, Albertus, good morning. Okay, so there we have it. The first of the 7 days. Now, John bears witness 3 times over the next couple of pages, 3 times. The first one, which is the one we're going to look at now, is to the Jewish authorities, the priests and Levites. The second one, possibly on the second day, to the Pharisees, and that would be verses 24 through to 28. And then you also have the third time he bears witness to his own disciples. So that would be days 1, 2, and 3, or days 1 and 2. Doesn't really matter. And we'll go back to day 1 to verses 19 to 23. So it's interesting. The Jewish authorities send important messengers to John. They're not sending any old riffraff. They're not sending a little group of soldiers or a messenger to say, "Who are you?" Who are they sending? They're sending no less than priests and Levites. These are important people within the temple. The priests, obviously, but the Levites as well. They had a really important priest-like, the lower version of priest-like role within the temple itself. And they were the sort of people you didn't sort of send on any old mission. It's a bit like sending, I don't know, bishops and priests off to go and find out what's going on somewhere. It's not a low-level religious delegation that's being sent. It's a high-level one. And that shows that they really hold John the Baptist either in esteem, or they want something from him, or a bit of both, or they're frightened of him, or all 3 of those things. We know some things about John the Baptist that might mean that it's worth sending priests and Levites to him, and later on the Pharisees come and send themselves. Why? Well, he's the son of a priest, and that son of a priest was an important priest. He's also been an ascetic in the desert. He's dressed like a prophet, wearing clothes of a prophet, camel hair, and with a belt tied around his middle. In other words, he's dressed in death. These were the clothes that Elijah wore out in the desert as well. So he's making a point here, is John the Forerunner and Baptist. So he's dressed like a prophet. His courage and his contempt for worldly things. He lives in extreme asceticism, and that itself has impressed the people, all the people, but also the priests and Levites need to come and look for themselves as well. He is a well-known personality by this time, and he has his own disciples. Also, he is busy baptizing. We'll come on to that later on, but there's the word is eschatological. It means to do with the end times. There's an end times note about this baptizing people at that point. Now they come with this very straightforward question: who are you? Or who are you? I'm not quite sure how they pronounced it. Probably, who are you? They actually want to know. But they might want to know for their own reasons. Certainly the fathers in the church, people like St. Augustine, St. Gregory, St. John Chrysostom, all of them are pretty wary about the Levites and the priests sending themselves or being sent to find out. And they tend to look with at least one eyebrow cocked in suspicion of their motives, shall we say. Now, At the time, in the first century, the Jews already had a lot of ideas, and they were about the coming Messiah, and they were full of expectation of the coming Messiah. 450 years roughly had gone past since God had spoken them to be through a prophet before. Well, that's like us going back to the time of Henry VIII, before you get a message at all from God. And they probably thought this is quite a long time. Meanwhile, quite a lot has gone wrong. There have been all sorts of things that happened during that time, in that 450 years, which should not be surprising. That's a long time in human history. And amongst them, of course, is the country has been overrun by Romans. And when you're overrun, you begin to look out for something to happen to put these matters right, especially if you look at yourselves and think of yourselves as being God's chosen people. Okay? So, here we go. What were the three big ideas about what they thought the Messiah would be like? First of all, would he be a prophet? And they would talk about the prophet. Would he be the prophet? Another prophet, like Moses, to come and renew the law within Israel. Would he be a great prophet along those lines? Not just a prophet, but the prophet. A really important world-changing, or rather Judaism-changing prophet. Secondly, would he be a priest of the priestly caste? And be able to sacrifice once and for all the people. Thirdly, would he be a royal Messiah? Would he be another king like David? And you know, if you read through the Old Testament, you can feel all of these things within the Old Testament. And different areas of Judaism, different types of people in Judaism looked out for a prophet, a priest, or a king who would fulfill this messianic concept. Well, we, with 2020 vision, as it were, who on earth wants 2020 vision at the moment, are able to look back and say that he turns out to be all three of those things. Christ is a prophet, he's a priest, and he's a king, but he's also God. And it was that last bit there they were not expecting. And to say again, the fact that John is actually out in the wilderness baptizing has this, is a sort of proclamation of the end times. He's also not very far away from Qumran, where the Essenes were. Many people think that John possibly was an Essene, or had been an Essene. They lived out in the desert. They lived a very ascetical life. They were wrapped up in the idea of the coming Messiah, and so on. And of course, crowds of people are following him. So he is getting disciples. He is making a difference. People are being baptized. And he's saying that they should do so in order to usher in the last times. So they ask this question, who are you? And John, first of all, confesses. It's very interesting where they say that, isn't it? Now, John is rubbing this in. This one, now it's John. I'm going to call him the evangelist. The evangelist, John, is rubbing this in. Even at the time that John was writing, there were people still discussing John the Baptizer and saying, well, maybe he was actually the prophet. Maybe he was the Messiah. And John is rubbing this in a big, strong way. You notice in verse 20, he says it 3 times, really. I am not the Christ. He says, he confesses once. He did not deny twice. He confessed 3 times, I am not the Christ. Okay? So the evangelist may well be writing for his own audience there. John said it, probably. And if he did say it, it's a very strong thing to have said. He also uses, it's interesting where he says, I am not the Christ. Because ego ime appears within there, and that's the divine name that Christ is going to use about himself. I am. Okay, that means God. That is the name of God. I am. And he says, ego ou ime, ego uk ime. I not am the Christ. That's a very strong way of putting it in New Testament Greek. So not only is it repeated 3 times, he confessed, he did not deny, but confessed. Then very strong, I am not the Christ. Okay, so you can't really get, thank you very much indeed, Christos. You cannot get stronger than that. There's no way of getting it stronger. 3 times repeated, I'm not the Christ, I'm not the Christ, I'm not the Christ. Okay, got that in your head? Good, I am not the Christ. It's possible, of course, that these, as I said before, that the priests and Levites are wanting him to be the Christ for their own usage. They can then mold him to be the sort of Christ that they particularly want, which presumably would be a priestly sort of Christ, because after all, John comes from a priestly family. So he could be recruited back into their ranks in order to bump up their own prestige within Jerusalem and Judea. That subverting of somebody rather who's a charismatic figure. Everybody can see how useful that would be in the chaos that was Judea at the time. Okay, so too bad. Are you Elijah? They say in verse 21. We can divide this into 2 bits. What then? Are you Elijah? The words "what then" come directly from everyday speech at the time. It's rather like in North Lincolnshire. They quite often say, now then. Now then has absolutely no meaning, really, but it means all sorts of stuff up there. It means, how are you? Hello, good day, good afternoon. It's got multiple uses as a greeting, as a question, and all the rest of it. Now then, and here we have, what then? Are you Elijah? And here what we're doing is that in the minds of the questioners, you have to have the quotation from 4 Kingdoms 2:11. Now, 4 Kingdoms is exactly the same as 2 Kings. Okay, so if you have a Protestant or Catholic Bible, you can look this up in 2 Kings 2:11. If you have an Orthodox Bible, then it's 4 Kingdoms 2:11. So it's 2:11. It just depends whether it's kingdoms, in which case it's 4 kingdoms, or kings, in which case it's 2 kings. And this is where Elijah is taken up into heaven in front of Elisha in a great whirlwind in the chariot, the famous chariot of fire. The theological college I went to, if the seminarian was taking evensong, then he had his back to a big stained glass window of Elijah going up into heaven in a chariot of fire. It was in memory of one of the priests who had died while sitting in the opposite chair. And he had been whirled up into heaven during evensong. And it's got nothing whatever to do with this, never mind. But the idea was that Elijah was still alive, and therefore Elijah could come back again. But Elijah would come back not as a baby. He'd come back not as a child in the womb of Elizabeth. He had come back not announced to his father Zechariah beforehand. He had come back as he was. He'd come back as a fully formed adult, coming back, as it were, on the return trip in the fiery chariot. So John is quite right in saying, no, I am not he. I am not that one. If you look at Malachi 4:5, it says that Elijah will also be the precursor of the coming of the Messiah. Okay? And this causes a bit of confusion. It's really interesting to read the church fathers about how they come to terms with this. Probably the best one, I think, is Pope St. Gregory the Great. And he says, okay, it depends on which direction you're looking at it from. For instance, if you were to ask a great man, are you a great man? The great man would say, no, I'm not. I'm not a great man. Unless possibly your name was Field Marshal Montgomery. He always thought he was a great man. Are you a great man? No, I'm not a great man. If you ask other people, is he a great man? They'd all say, yes, he's a very great man. And it's a similar thing Pope St. Gregory is saying here. If you ask John, are you Elijah? He says, no, I'm not Elijah. I am John. But you ask Christ, and Christ answers the question in Matthew chapter 11 and beyond there as well. But in Matthew chapter 11, who was he? He says, if you can but see it, this is Elijah. He is Elijah. Now, the title and the dignity that John refuses to give to himself, the Lord gives him. And that shows John's humility. It also shows his dignity, the two things coming at the same time. And he is not Elijah, as far as he speaks, is concerned, but he is Elijah. He comes in the spirit of Elijah, as it were, when the Lord speaks. And as the Lord is God, he knows better than John. Okay? It's nice. It's very nice. If you can find quotations about this, they're easy to find, actually. If you look on the internet, you can find lots of different biblical. you can find lots of lovely quotations from the patristic fathers easily, without having to go off and spend a fortune buying them. We also have a huge collection of them here in the monastery library. But if you do that, you'll be able to see for yourself the wonderful way. Just look up various gospel commentaries by the fathers and see how they try and dig themselves out of this hole. And I think that my favorite one by a long way is Pope St. Gregory. Clever fellow, that one. Very good. And also he sent missionaries here, so doubly clever. All right, now where have I got to? Okay, done all that. So having decided that he's not the prophet, they then say, sorry, not Elijah, they say, are you the prophet? And he answered, no. Now, the prophet they're looking for, which I said slightly earlier before, prophet like Moses, like Elijah, like Elisha, a great prophet who's going to usher in the last times. And he says no. He says no because he isn't the prophet. The prophet is Christ. So he's not the prophet. But that does not mean to say that he is not a prophet, but he's not the sort of prophet or a sort of prophet that they have in mind. It's a bit like when people say to me, I don't believe in God. And I say to them, tell me what sort of God you don't believe in, then I'll tell you whether or not I don't believe in that God either. And they then describe a God that I could never believe in. And I say, you're quite right. I don't believe in that God either. One of the a highly intelligent person said to me a little while ago, 2 or 3 years ago, must be 3 years ago, it's coming out to Easter. And he said to me in all seriousness, he said, you know, Father, he's one of the governors in the prison that I worked in. So, you know, Father, whatever you say, you'll never get me to believe in the Easter rabbit. I was lost for words and told him so. I'm completely lost for words to know what to say to you about that matter. You'll be pleased to know that I don't believe in the Easter rabbit either. And he looked at me in total astonishment. Anyway, they were really asking him, are you the Easter rabbit? And John is saying, no, I'm not. I am not the sort of prophet that you have in mind. Okay, I'm not the Easter rabbit. I must be careful. I'm going to spend the rest of the time laughing my head off. He is immeasurably greater than the Easter rabbit will ever be. He's far greater. And he's greater because, I have to gather my wits together here a minute. It's not made easier by the fact the cat is looking in through the window here. And so, go away, Amy. John is much greater than any of the previous prophets because the other prophets were only able to point towards Christ, whereas John can actually point at him. Okay? There's all the difference in the world between those two things. And they're the ones that they're thinking he's going to point towards Christ. But no, he is far greater. He will actually point at him and say, there he is. There is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And you can see here that there is a deep difference going on there. Very deep difference. And then finally, they say, well, who are you then? And I'm going to read what John says from Isaiah in its context, because the context is really what is deeply important here. And from the context, you can begin to see what John really thinks of himself and also of the person towards whom he will point, at whom he will point. Okay, Isaiah chapter 40, verses 1 to 11. Okay, you'll know it very well. You'll have heard it many times. Comfort, yes, comfort my people, says God. O priests, speak to the heart of Jerusalem. Comfort her, for her humiliation is ended. Her sin is pardoned, for she received from the Lord's hand double for her sins. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight the paths of our God. Every valley shall be filled, every mountain and hill humbled. The crooked places shall be made straight, the rough places into plains. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see the salvation of God, for the Lord has spoken. The voice said, cry out. So I said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all man's glory is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God abides forever. O you who bring good tidings to Zion, go into the high mountains. O you who bring good tidings to Jerusalem, lift up your voice with strength. Lift it up, be not afraid. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, the Lord is coming with strength, and his arm is with authority. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. He will feed his flock like a shepherd, and gather the lambs with his arm, and he will comfort those with young. Isn't that wonderful? It's truly wonderful. Truly, truly wonderful. And within there, you get who John is and who Christ is. And John gives them this clue just in that very short bit. Okay? I cry out loudly in the wilderness. Make straight the way of the Lord, as the prophet Isaiah said. The fathers say, commenting about this, that you have to cry out to yourself. Make straight the way of the Lord. From the Lord to your own heart. Make it straight. Straight in there. Don't allow anything to get in the way. Knock down the mountains. Build out the plains. Make the road not curved anymore. Make it straight. Straight there into your heart. And then those other things from Isaiah will then come true. Okay, it's beautiful. It's really, truly beautiful. And on that beautiful note, I plan to end. Okay, let's just see who else is here. Natalia, God bless you. Mariana, good morning. Thank you, Christos, for doing that. Good morning, Irini. Good morning, Khal. Now then, Father, Erdu. Watch your cock. Oh, dear. Yes, I like Pope St. Gregory. Yeah, a great deal. Good morning, Vera. Really glad to hear about Father Vasily. That's really, and the others, they're now better, thank God. So add Arsene, Father Stephen, Anne Marie, and James. To your list, to my list. God bless them. May God. I've been pounced on by Maria Helena's cat. I would like you also, please, to pray for Helena. Helena's husband died the other day, very suddenly. I knew both, obviously know Helena very well, and I knew her husband well too, and her 2 children. Very sudden, very unexpected. So you could pray for them, and also, of course, we'll continue to pray for the others that have asked us to pray. Pray for Thekla and her family, please. Pray for each other, and we'll pray also for us and Anne-Marie and James. Remember to pray for Joseph and for Angelos, please. And please pray for Metropolitan Ephraim. I shall endeavor to find out how he is getting on. We continue to pray, obviously, for Andrew, who's also somebody in my heart. You know, it's always a good thing to remember to pray for your own bishop. A bishop has got a huge responsibility, huge. And in so many ways, a bishop or an archbishop or patriarch also, they stand alone. There are very few people that they stand with. They're always standing alone. And their job is a very, Stephanos, their job is a very, very tough one. Okay? So pray for them. We'll also pray for Stephanos as well. I've written that down, Nicholas. What is Judy saying? I'd be glad to pray for all you mentioned. Thank you. Great message today. Oh, God, thank God. Now Peter Rabbit is stuck in my head all day. The Easter Rabbit, yes. John the Baptist, I am not the Easter Rabbit. Oh dear. You know, when somebody says something like that to you, or says, the whole business about Santa Claus, I don't know why that's part and parcel of the Christmas message. I think, well, St. Nicholas is a great man, but you've got the Christian message all wrong here. And certainly St. Nicholas will be smacking his face with his hand at the moment with horror, the idea of that. But when people say that sort of thing, you suddenly realize what an enormous way you have to go. Yes, I heard about Archbishop David of Alaska dying, and he's been in my prayers. Okie dokie. So, God bless you, God willing, tomorrow being amazingly Friday already, we shall meet again if I'm spared. Okay, God bless you, your prayers. I've got to find where it says end stream on this one. Here it is. I found it. Okay, God bless. Bye-bye.